Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a good day today and enjoying the last. I guess I don't want to say the last, but but fall is creeping up on us, isn't it? You can definitely feel it in the air, and yeah. So enjoy the sun. Enjoy the sun that we've got left here and the warmth. And I'm certainly planning on doing that over the next week or so and going camping and things. But today. Uh, as always, I'm sifting through my wisdom teachings and just reflecting a lot on, on what people are wrestling with and what people are desiring to know. Um, and it brought to mind something that I wrote on a long time ago. Um, and it just felt like it was time to revisit it. Um, and of course, everything I revisit is just super relevant to me, um, and um, and it seems to others as well. And so, what I wanted to revisit today is an incredibly important topic in all areas of life, and especially relationship. And it definitely is a component of all healthy relationships and healthy parenting and healthy marriages and just health all over the place. Although we live in a time when this aspect of our lives and of our psyche and of our character are not that supported. I mean, let's be honest about it. And that aspect of our character or that value or virtue that I'm speaking of is called humility. I think we all like to think, we're humble people or, that we aspire to humility. But the truth is that we live in a time of inflated, uh, feelings of entitlement and indulgence. And we live in a time, I mean, look around, look on the news. Everybody, and I say everybody, but there's just this strong uh, tidal wave right now where people are so very concerned about their own rights and their own specialness and their own, just themselves. And you look at what's going on with social media right now and digital technology and just all the new challenges, if you will, of what that's bringing because everybody seems to want their 15 seconds of fame or 15 minutes or whatever it is. Um, and although we've got all this technology and much of society just really scrambling and even kind of advocating for instant gratification and all these things, research is really showing that people are becoming more isolated, more lonely, more depressed, more anxious, more suicidal. Addiction is increasing. And so yeah, there's always this kind of tension, I guess you could say, between um, the truth of who we really are, or what I might call the mature, the mature people that we are, or that we want to be, and who we are in our immaturity. And of course, one of the trademarks of immaturity is arrogance, a lack of humility. So I want to speak to that because it's so important in it's in all aspects of life. And so the reflection I wrote quite some time ago was really focusing on humility as the great equalizer. Humility as the great equalizer. And when I think of equalizing, I think of oftentimes of relationships, whether it be in marriages or whether it be between parents and teen, where it seems like things are out of balance, where people are getting to be right about how wrong the other person is, and everybody's got a stack of evidence to prove how right they are about how wrong the other person is. You see, that's the immature temptation of the immature golden child, of the immature ego, um, that to stack up evidence against someone, to stack up evidence against a family member or a spouse, to prove how wrong they are, you know, there's just a huge temptation on the part of the immature psyche to be right. I mean, that is one of the biggest addictions that we have as human beings, is to be right. And to want to take credit for things, to want to credit ourselves. See, being right at the cost of relationship and wanting to take credit and wanting to credit ourselves are trademarks of the immature psyche. So when we want to be right and we want to be special and we want credit, then that's hard for us to do unless somehow we're comparing ourselves against somebody else. And the comparison we need to make is that we're better than what we're comparing ourselves to. So by the very nature, it becomes divisive. It creates adversarial situations. It creates tension. In different kinds of transpersonal psychology and in Jungian psychology, there is often reference to something called the tension between the opposites. So, even in our, we could be left brain, right brain. Some people call it yin and yang. Some people call it masculine and feminine. Some people call it, we live in a world oftentimes where there are opposites. And in relationship, especially in if you will, romantic and marriage relationships, isn't it always interesting how we seem to attract our opposite? Some people say that, that we attract our opposites, because, of course, it represents a part of ourselves that we, I guess you could say, enjoy or appreciate, but we yet have to embrace. It may represent parts of ourselves that are repressed, or what have you, but, we have an attraction oftentimes to the opposite. And people will say sometimes that the very thing that we are attracted to in that person, we will later resent. We will later be irritated by. And I think that's true. In many ways, that's true. And as much as we like to talk about appreciating each other's differences, appreciating the difference between men and women, or appreciating, the knowledge that youth have and that our elders have. And, it's like there's a lot of this kind of black and white or divisive kind of ideas. There's tension between those two places. And we like to think that we're enlightened enough to be able to stand in a place of appreciation. But we really can't hold that ground for very long. And we often can find ourselves spiraling into again, collecting evidence about how wrong people are and about how wrong our family members and our spouses are, and feel really right about it. But as we know, it's just a nasty, nasty seduction. That's why it qualifies as an indulgence. So as I said, I think people like to think that they're humble and that they're appreciative of differences, but it's not a ground that people can hang out in very long because of this other part of the psyche. And so how do we help ourselves mature in this place? I think we have to take on a discipline, and that discipline has to be a discipline of humility, a teaching to follow that constantly draws us into humility, because there's a beautiful paradox in humility. It reminds me of an Einstein quote that I saw that I chuckled about. It was something like, as we stand before God, we are all equally foolish. You see, the immature person doesn't stand before anything other than itself. And so, or itself, or whatever it chooses to be subject to, and it usually chooses to be subject to something that complements itself. That comes out of the immature narcissism and egocentricity and grandiosity. So a mature person will never choose to stand in the presence of something that will reveal something, if you will, negative about itself. That's the nature of narcissism. That's the nature of being infantile. That's the nature of being immature. Conversely, a mature person chooses to stand in front of something that reveals imperfections. A mature person will take on a discipline that reveals their shortcomings and imperfections. A mature person will pursue knowledge, will attend lectures and courses, will be highly interested in personal growth, especially personal growth that challenges them to become self-reflective and self-aware, leading to humility. One could say that if you're going to choose a discipline or a path to follow, always choose one that invites you into deeper and deeper humility. Because as Einstein said, we can get full of ourselves. We can deceive ourselves so easily about who we think we are, and we need to stand in the presence of a light that reveals the truth about who we are. So humility is the great equalizer. As Einstein said, you stand before God and we're all equally foolish. Nobody's better than anybody else. We're all deflated. We're all taken down a notch or two. We all come off our high horse. Doesn't matter whether you have a PhD in something or that you've never completed high school. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or whatever it is. When you stand in the presence of truth, you get leveled. You get brought down a notch or two. So humility is the great gift. It's the great equalizer. It's how two people who appear completely opposite can live together, can love each other, can stand in appreciation of one another. You see, parents are always asking me or saying to me, my kids never appreciate me, or people never appreciate me. My spouse doesn't appreciate me. People just don't appreciate what they have, what they get. Okay, well, what's the recipe for that? How do you generate appreciation? Now, in previous conversations, I talked about the archetype of desire and sacrifice, and we know that's part of it. What that desire and sacrifice means is that whenever I want something, I must give up something for it. Otherwise, my mind, my psyche does not assign value to that thing. We know that, generally speaking, but we don't apply it to everything. Generally speaking, we know that it's good to put in a hard day's work or what have you, and we know that it's good for our kids to go get a job and to work for things, to make a sacrifice. We know that when we just give people things and we give our kids things, oftentimes they don't appreciate them. If they appreciate them, that window of appreciation seems to be super small. And an hour later, they want more and more. I mean, this is the person who can never be satisfied because they've never had to sacrifice anything. They've never had to give up anything. So yes, we need to take on a discipline of humility, a discipline that asks us to give up something of ourselves. Now, another way to come at it is a discipline of accountability, of self-accountability. So if both people in a relationship are practicing personal accountability, if they're both willing to submit themselves to a discipline, to a higher authority, as Einstein suggested, that can hold us accountable, then we have an opportunity to become more. I mean, if you have one opposite and another opposite by themselves, they might be something, but if they could come together, if they could fuse together, then they would become more powerful than ever. They would not only complement each other, they would just become a powerful force to reckon with. But opposites, it's kind of like oil and water. It's like, or two magnets of opposite polarities. It's like it's hard to put them together because they just kind of have a life of their own. So it needs some other element, a third element, to come in and be the catalyst. And humility is that catalyst. Humility is the thing that allows the tension between the opposites it catalyzes the tension into a fusion, into a marriage. And both people have to be willing to enter into that. On a good day, that's how it works. It works because people have been informed. People have been given some information, hopefully prior, that says humility is a good thing. It deflates us. It reduces the ego, but it offers something way bigger, way more satisfying to the soul, into who we are as human beings. So then the question is how do you generate appreciation? Well, it comes through humility. And how do you experience humility? Through a discipline of accountability and responsibility, of self-awareness, self-reflection. And some people will say, well, why should I practice self-accountability if the other person isn't? That's a great question. Why? Well, because it makes you a person of integrity. Because you understand the paradoxical gift that's there. That humility doesn't make you weak, it makes you powerful. That when you can be accountable for the things that you've done that are not a true reflection of who you really are, then you're freer. See, when somebody doesn't account for what they've done that is not a true reflection of who they really are, then they have to kick in a bunch of defense mechanisms. In other words, they have to hide it from people. And that takes a tremendous amount of energy. It wears you down. It depletes us when we do that. So there's that paradoxical experience. It's kind of like the immature ego, the immature part of us, will not like humility because it's going to reveal something, and it's going to ask that we give something up. On the other side of it, paradoxically, that's great because the thing that we're giving up is an indulgence, is an immaturity. Is something that we truly want to give up in order to be ourselves. One of the key tools that I use in my groups and lectures to help people understand humility is the use of stories and parables and quotes and things like that. And this very, very much reminds me of the Christian quote or parable of the two debtors. And maybe you're familiar with it, maybe not, but it's a really simple formula, if you will. So don't get hung up on where it comes from, just look for the formula. I'm always looking for the formula or the archetype, what's called the archetype underneath. And that's what stories often are in mythology. They're trying to describe a particular psychological orchestration, a psychological law, a spiritual law, if you want to call that, a dominant theme within the psyche. And so, to really develop deep appreciation, and gratitude and love, you have to come to terms with how out of integrity you are. And the story is this, isn't it? It's a simple story of there was someone who had a lot of money and they could loan money to people, and this person loaned money to two different individuals. To one person, they loaned, let's say they loaned, $50 million, and to another person, they loaned 5,000. And the story says that, well, you know what? At the end of the day, neither person could pay back the person who lent the money. And of course, back in the day, in the day in which this story or parable was used and written down, that it applied, there were debtors' prisons. So it meant that if you couldn't pay off your debt, that you would be imprisoned. That you would be imprisoned, your family would be imprisoned, and everything you had would be taken from you, and you'd have to work that debt off. Well, how long do you think it would take somebody to work off a $50 million debt? They could never work that off, could they? They and their family would have to stay in prison for the remainder of their lives, and possibly in their children and their children for generations. This whole family would be imprisoned. Now, the other person who owed $5,000, how quickly could that person could pay that debt off, right? It wouldn't really take that long, even if they had to go to work for this person and work it off. Their family probably wouldn't have to go into prison, maybe just the one person for a little bit of time, until they were able to work that debt off. So that could be worked off. But the story says is that the lender, the person who lent the money, out of their benevolence, out of the mercy in their own heart, they forgave both of the debts. In other words, neither person had to pay back the debt. They were free. The debts were forgiven. So the question is, in that story, is what would be the responses of these two people who were forgiven these debts? Who would love the lender more, is what the question was. And of course the answer is, isn't it? The one who owed the most. The one who could never pay off their debt. The one who was the most out of integrity, if you will. They're the guy who owed 5,000, and okay, sure, I'll pay that off for you, right? It's good. You don't owe anymore. He'd probably say, hey, thank you so much. That's so great. I really appreciate it. And then he'd walk away and, say he would say that he had appreciation, but it's just kind of like momentarily. Maybe have appreciation. I mean, if somebody paid off one of our debts of $5,000, we might appreciate that for, a few months or a year or whatever, but then it would fade away. But if somebody paid off a debt that would have imprisoned us for our entire life and for generations to come, how much appreciation do you think that person would have for the person who forgave them? How much love do you think that person would have for the person who forgave them? A tremendous amount, right? That's what I'm talking about. See, that's the paradox. That's the gift of humility, is that when we can enter into a discipline where we can clearly see the level of our indulgences and our self-deceit and whatever all that is, and we can clearly see it, and we can see the breadth of it, and we can see the depth of it, and we can see that we could never pay that off in our lifetime, then we have an opportunity, if we, I guess you could say, got the money from a benevolent lender, to generate a tremendous amount of love. Another thing that's cool about this formula is that it's not time-based. It's depth-based. And so I say to people, if you want more love in your relationships, or more love between you and your son, or between you and your, whatever it is, if you want more love, it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of how much you're willing to admit. It's a matter of how much you're willing to be accountable for. And the more you can be accountable for, the more humility you can generate, and the more humility you can generate, the more appreciation, gratitude, and love you will feel. That's why my approach over many, many years, and what I do in private practice, and what I do in individual sessions, and what I do in my group work is all about accountability and responsibility. It's about leadership. It's about being true to oneself. It's about being extraordinarily accountable, or what some people call unconditionally accountable. If you knew that being accountable was the doorway to love, appreciation, and gratitude, would you not seek that? Would you not seek that constantly? Why? Not to try to please anybody else, because it frees you. You do it because it's good for you. You do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because it's a true reflection of who you really are. That is the key. So I often tell another story about a person I knew once who was a bit of a Grinch, bit of a bah humbug when it came to enjoying Christmas and the holiday season. And there was this person and I were spending some time together. This was many years ago, and you know, sitting in the living room, what have you, enjoying a fire, nice, cup of tea or whatever. And this person's talking about how they don't like Christmas and they just wish the season were over. And as we were sitting there in the living room, just off to the side, of course, was our Christmas tree. And under the Christmas tree, there was lots of gifts. And there was even some gifts for this particular person. And I said, you know why you don't like Christmas? You know why you don't like the season? And this person said, well, no, not really. I said, would you like to know? And they said, yeah, sure, I'd like to know. I said, okay, well, you see all those presents over there? Some of them even have your name on there. I said, you see all those presents? I said, you don't deserve a one of those. Not a one. You don't deserve those. You can't take credit for that. There's nothing you've done that warrants those presents being there. And I said, then there's nothing I've done. You see, some of those presents are for me too. I said, there's not a thing I've done. There's not a thing I can take credit for those presents being there. And yet they're there. Like, do you get it? It's kind of like you don't deserve any of those presents, but they're there. I don't deserve any of those presents either, but they're there. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, just to get that one insight would change the whole thing. It'd be celebration. You mean I'm getting presents and I don't even deserve them? Absolutely. Wow. You just like wonder and awe starts to show up. It's like, really? Wow. Life is good, isn't it? You start to appreciate life. You start to appreciate again. But when this person, just had no awareness of the reality that they didn't deserve what was there, they couldn't experience appreciation or gratitude. But by planting oneself in that truth, by taking that position, it opens up a huge doorway for appreciation and gratitude. I often say this to people in a relationship, that I'm talking to in my group or in my one-on-ones. It's kind of like when they can really see how far out of integrity they are, when they can really see, if you will, how much they've messed up. Because like Einstein said, when we're standing in the presence of what is true, we're all foolish. We're super foolish. I keep bringing up Einstein because I know what people want to argue with this formula, but it's a formula. It is what it is. It's like a universal law and super important to human beings. if we want to have love and appreciation. And this is this kind of gift, the gift of humility, is really different from the kind of love that one might experience through attachment theory, right? Attachment theory basically says, you get cared for well by people, and then you bond to people, and then you become loyal, and you just have your love for people grows over time because of how they've treated you. With this gift, with this formula of humility, you can have love right here, right now. It doesn't take time. It's all about depth. It's all about, how real you want to get. See, that's maturity right there. One might say that's a highly enlightened perspective. Why? Because, this idea that love, appreciation, and gratitude takes time. Yeah, that's one way. That's one way to do it, but that's a very, I want to say, kind of traditional, kind of mediocre way of going about it. That's how an immature mind would resolve the issue. It would be a time issue. Love takes time. Appreciation and gratitude, just takes time. Actually, it doesn't. It takes depth. Now, this isn't my opinion. This is the stance. This is what is offered us as a gift through many, many wisdom teachings. Like I said, and we already know it. We already apply it to some degree in our own lives. We know that if we just give everything to people, they don't experience appreciation or love. That there's a need to make some sacrifices. There's a need to give some things up. And that's another way to do it. We can work, but a faster way that takes less time is to allow ourselves to participate in a discipline that acts as a light, as Einstein said, that reveals our foolishness and the depth, the never-ending depth of our foolishness. I can imagine people going, hey, geez, John, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. No, it's one of those mysterious kind of grown-up things that you just get. It's kind of like that's the way the immature ego kind of sees it. It's like, hey, this isn't a lot of fun. That's not what I signed up for. But when you look deeper into the human psyche, truth is, that's exactly what you signed up for. You didn't come to this planet to have your experiences of appreciation, gratitude, happiness, and all that attached to what you're doing or the outside world. What's so great about that? I mean, actually, that kind of sucks. Why take that route when, as a human being, you've got this amazing ability to self-reflect and to generate appreciation and gratitude that has nothing to do with the outside world, so you can be completely in control of your appreciation, gratitude, and love. So you can experience it at a deeper level, and at a level that is less subject, or not at all subject, to what's going on in the outer world. Wouldn't that be a gift? Instead of being on the external roller coaster ride of appreciation, gratitude, and love, to find a rock solid place where you can experience that. Instead of those experiences being fleeting moments from moment to moment, hour to hour. If you're a parent, don't you want your child to experience deep levels of satisfaction, love, and contentment and appreciation? I mean, what a hell it is, right? Imagine you have a person or a child or whatever that you've raised that they're just never satisfied. You buy them this, you buy them this, you buy them this, you buy them this, you buy them this. If you have a spouse that's that way, you buy them this, you buy them this, you buy them this, you take this vacation, this vacation, this vacation, this vacation. You just keep doing, 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 doing. Nothing is ever good enough. Nothing ever lasts. See that's part of growing up, isn't it? We do travel that road. We go down that road and only realize it's a dead end. It's like the nasty end of consumerism. We just consume, 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 seek out entertainment, 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 and entertainment. Um, yeah, and there's just nothing but emptiness. So to really deepen character and to really find a solid place within ourselves to stand where we can experience appreciation, gratitude, and love and increase it is really comes from a practice, a discipline in humility, accountability, and responsibility. That's how you balance the opposites. That's the only way opposites can survive is by standing in the presence of something greater than themselves, and in standing in that presence, their shortcomings are revealed. And as human beings, we need that. We just really need to make sure that we don't get too full of ourselves, because that is the human tendency. That's built into our psyche. And it's just really alive and well right now in this time and day of inflated entitlement and indulgence. Specialness is running rampant right now, and we really do need to get back to a discipline of humility. So if you're a parent, you need to lead the way, and you need to, you do well to bring to your family a discipline of humility. You need to let them see you, take courses and do counseling, whatever you need to do to continue to stand in the light that reveals, your flaws, if you will, your shortcomings. And you can feel confident in that when you do that, you become a better person. That's the grown up kind of mystery solved. That's what we know as grown ups. There's an interesting paradox there. That's the transformative process. That's what we're looking for. And immature people can't understand that. Immature people can't see that doorway. And so that's why as parents and as adults, we really want to practice that. Lead by example. That's where we should be investing our time, investing our money. In I hate to use the word personal growth, because I think that industry, that term has been hijacked and has become absorbed in this phenomena of entitlement and indulgence, where oftentimes personal growth is equated with, pump yourself up. It just fuels the narcissism, the grandiosity, the egocentricity. You know, that's not what I mean by when I talk about personal growth. Maybe I should talk about transpersonal growth. In other words, growth of our character, growth of our soul. You know, growth of who we are. In our, if you will, in our true self, our authentic self, our higher self. You know, where the narcissistic kind of view on personal growth is very self-centered. It's a take no prisoners, dog eat dog, you know, step on, leave behind anybody who's getting in your way approach. And that's indulgent. So, there are a lot of different things being offered out there, but this is the thing to keep in mind. Whatever path of discipline you're pursuing, it should be a path of humility. The end result is greater levels of appreciation, gratitude, and love, for what you have. You should be content. You should feel yourself being content with the simple things in life. You should be looking across the table at your son or daughter or partner and just being grateful that they're with you as you stand in the truth of who you are, and you're indulgent to the nth degree, that you owe a debt that you could never pay off, and yet these people are with you. Let it warm your heart. Let that generosity of spirit go out to these people. These people are with you in spite of it. They've managed to set that aside. That's what we call forgiveness. They have forgiven you of your debt. And you are doing that for them. You see, that's the beauty of it. Now, even though you're sitting on opposite sides of the table, you're united in humility. You feel warm and fuzzy towards each other, and you love each other, and you want to be with this person. Why? Because they've forgiven you for so much, and they want to be with you because you've forgiven them for so much, and all there is love and gratitude. That's the truth. So, when you're choosing a path, choose that path of humility. Live that path of humility. Wake up in the morning and listen to your devotionals. Listen to, to teachers. Listen to radio shows, TV shows, whatever it is. That's using technology with integrity. You're not using technology to pump yourself up or to divide yourself, to build evidence against people and your family members. You're doing it to do the opposite. You're using technology in a way that has integrity. So be careful of the path that you pick, because some paths are very seductive when it comes to what they offer. They try to appeal to the immature ego, the immature golden child. They want us to be special. They want us to be number one. They want us to, to be judgmental of others, who aren't what we think they should be. Remember, in standing before God, we are all equally foolish. So, as we say, everybody's got their issues to deal with. Don't run from it. Embrace it. And we'll all be better for it. So I hope this has been helpful today. And as you can see, I'm inspired, because it is the truth. It is what it is, and certainly something that I want to practice every day, that I'm attracted to. As I said, the mature mind pursues humility, even though sometimes it stings. It's a double-edged sword. You stand in that light and you're found to be foolish. Yeah, that stings a little bit, but the truth will set you free, so you get free. So mature people pursue freedom because there's honor in it. There's integrity in it. It's the path, it's the road less traveled, as they say. But I've always thought, there may be few travelers on this road, but the folks who are there are awesome, and you'll always be in the best of company. Historically, you look at all the wisdom teachers, they travel that road. They travel it now. They paved the way, and so let's walk it together. Walk together, arm in arm, in honor and love. So have a great day. Enjoy life. Having to dove into that place of humility and come back up, in awe and wonder. So I'm off, do my thing, and Again, thank you for being a blessing to me and to all around you. Have a great day.